everyone. Welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. A masked leader from Temple University's Students for Justice in Palestine just exposed their movement's true agenda. This was not some private meeting. This was recorded on video. And what these Students for Justice in Palestine revealed is, quite frankly, terrifying. They are now openly advocating for terrorism tactics to first collapse universities and then use those same methods to ultimately destroy America itself. You might have heard about Students for Justice at Palestine either on your college campus because you're in college, or just a lot in the news lately. They are kind of marketed as a small fringe group. They're not a small fringe group. SJP, which is the acronym for them, has expanded to over 350 chapters all across North America. And this is not new since the Israel-Hamas war began. No, this started back in 1993. So their whole goal is to agitate, organize protests, and specifically events, and again, protests, promoting Palestinian liberation. They do this most predominantly through the BDS movement that pushes universities to boycott, divest, and put sanctions on Israeli companies and institutions. But as we're seeing now, their tactics and goals are far more extreme than I think we really realize as a culture. I think some people who have been paying attention to this have known for a long time that their tactics are psychotic, but it's gotten worse. And remember, these are not just random protesters, right? They are highly organized activists driving major campus movements that we've seen really take over college campuses in the last year, maybe year or so. I would say since 2023, end of 2023. Now, SJP has been the central force behind so many of these movements, specifically the encampments popping up across universities in 2024. And you've also seen, you've seen that in the news coverage, right? We saw yesterday a bunch of students at Columbia University running into the library, disturbing students. We saw back in 24 students setting up tents, staging sit-ins, and creating what they call these liberated zones on the campuses. It's crazy. They're not spontaneous events, okay? All of this, what happened at Columbia yesterday, which if you missed it, it was crazy. A bunch of students flooded the library with their masks and their keffiyehs and the whole gear, all that they wear. This is not spontaneous, right? These are carefully coordinated campaigns with very specific goals in mind. And now, the video I'm about to show you, we have a leader openly admitting what those goals are, because we knew it in our core, but it's nice to have it validated. So in the video I'm about to show you, I'm going to pull it up for you in 1 second. The masked SJP leader who was on a Zoom call explicitly states that the aim of this is to bring down the universities using terrorism tactics. Even more disturbing, they claim that they plan to use those same methods to, quote, bring down America. Now, I do want to note that in the world of AI, we need to be extremely judicious. So the person in this video is wearing a mask, making it nearly impossible for me to see if any of the words that are being said match that's coming out of this person's mouth. This is allegedly, for legal purposes, a video from an SJP organization Zoom call.
Things that I've been reflecting on is this idea of disclosing and divestment being a central demand of the student movement last spring. When we ask university to divest from imperialism, the only way to fulfill that demand is destroying the university. And we should embrace that, because that's something we have to do if we're going to get real about liberation. We must accept the eventuality of bringing the USA to its knees, educate and disseminate and loop in other people on why these are victories, because we know it's victories. We know it's a victory when a red triangle goes above an Israeli soldier's head and the pig gets iced. We know that's a victory. We know it's a victory when prisoners break out. We know it's a victory when all these things happen. But a lot of people don't necessarily know that.
Yeah, that's not vague rhetoric, if I do say so myself. It's a really clear statement of intent from a movement leader. Now, talking about this, bringing up students for justice in Palestine at all tends to lead to a very serious question about the limits of free speech on college campuses. Universities are caught in this really weird, difficult position between protecting free expression, which they rarely did for conservatives, but now ensuring that Jewish students can feel safe while simultaneously allowing the pro-Palestinian students the ability to free expression. How administrators respond to SJP, I think, is going to be a case-by-case basis, but also is going to set precedents that affect campus activism for years to come. But again, people say that, and I say that, and I'm like, at the same time, this isn't just a movement designed to push back against America or the government or things that are happening at the university that maybe people might have moral questions or qualms about. This is a movement designed to destroy America and its existence. I don't think it's like the craziest thing to say, maybe we shouldn't allow groups that call for the absolute destruction of America using terrorism tactics. Call me crazy. I also don't think that every student supporting this cause truly understands what they are supporting, which it's not an excuse for them. It's just reality. I think many students joined this movement believing that they were supporting humanitarian causes, but that's not the case, as we clearly see from the intent of their leader. So now the question becomes, do these students, do these activists really understand what their leader's true end game is? And if they do, would they still participate? Do they still participate? I think the movement has radically grown because people are ignorant, and that the movement would radically shrink if the private goals that we heard in this video were more public and more transparent to the larger movement. But anyway, let me know whether you believe quashing this movement is a suppression of free speech or not, because it's a big, contentious question. And I do want to transition to another big story in the news. What is causing these delays at Newark Airport? Now, this is kind of wonky, maybe a little boring in the news, but once I got into the nitty-gritty of it, I started to understand the implications that it was going to have on politics moving forward. So if you haven't heard, Newark Airport had these major flight delays after air traffic control, which, those are the people that stand in the tower. They lost radar and communication with planes in the area, which if I were in that position, that's mortifying. It's so scary. You are there to be in charge of communicating with those planes to make sure that they land safely so that people don't die, they don't collide with anything, we don't have another DCA tragedy on our hands. But after that took place, after the air traffic control lost communications, that was considered a traumatic event. So 5 air traffic controllers for Newark Airport then went on medical leave because a traumatic event qualifies them for 45 days of medical leave. So I don't want to presume that these people are just taking 45 days of medical leave because they can, but I'm sure that might be the situation for some of them. It might not be. So we have this old, outdated, crappy equipment in our air traffic control rooms, and now we have very few people to actually work and operate that very crappy equipment. So this caused a ton of flight delays. It was like hundreds of flights that were delayed, hundreds of flights that were ended up being canceled. And in light of this, the House Minority Leader, this is Hakeem Jeffries, I'm sure you're all familiar with this guy, he has come out and blamed President Trump for these staffing shortages because the president has decided to nix affirmative action in air traffic control hiring. The idea that getting rid of DEI standards is going to somehow make it more difficult to hire people for air traffic control, I think is racist in and of itself, telling people that because of their skin color, they don't have special hiring techniques. I just find that to be silly and terrible thing to say. But anyway, this is not a true narrative because let me remind you, in June of 2023, which is, I believe, when Biden was in office, the government put out this massive report saying that there's a massive staffing problem with air traffic control. This has been going on for quite literally years. In April of 2024, the government also put out a report saying that the FAA has completely failed to modernize its infrastructure. This is a problem that's been going on for years and years and years. This didn't just pop up with the Trump administration and Doge cuts or whatever nonsense people are trying to sell on TikTok to get the left outraged. This is an ongoing crisis that our government left, right, and center has ignored for years. So don't buy into the partisan nature of this. This is a very cut and clean, kind of simplistic to understand. People were more focused, governments from Bush to Obama to Trump to Biden were more focused on other parts of their agenda than updating the FAA and dealing with something that we just kind of don't think about or passively think about. And it's scary because people's lives are at stake, but it's just the reality. It's not a political thing. Anyway, let's get into our docket for today. Feminists are trying to insert themselves into the conclave. Disney announced a new theme park that has really showcased their hypocrisy. And a Georgia student is facing potential deportation after running a red light. We're going to get the full story on that, not the media narrative spin. We'll get into all of that and more. So, without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. And the 5 underreported stories that you need to know are brought to you by Ground News. It is so hard to know what information to trust, especially when information is released faster than it can be verified. And let's be honest, reporting nowadays really favors clickbait content over high quality journalism. That's why when I'm prepping this show and when I'm reading my news day to day, I trust Ground News. It is an app and a website that combines news from all different sides of the political spectrum to give you the facts and see where the media is exaggerating, sensationalizing, or even underreporting the news. Like, come on, guys, they made an app for us. Anyway, when you use my link in the description, you'll get 40% off of the Vantage subscription, which, by the way, I pay for out of my own pocket because it's awesome. It's an amazing product. You can head over to check.ground.news/Chrissy to get informed on the go. Anyway, let's get into our stories for today. Very excited. This first one had me actually cackling. A group of feminists released pink smoke in Rome as a protest to call for more equality in the Catholic Church. The demonstration was organized by a group called the Women's Ordination Conference, which calls for female priesthood. They believe that women should be ordained as deacons and priests and bishops. The face of the movement, a woman named Kate McElwee, Kate spoke with NBC News and had this to say. This video is so funny.
It's a signal that women should be included in every aspect of the life of the church, especially as ordained priests and deacons. A woman's place is in the conclave. So our smoke is also, it's a sign of hope that the church will work quickly to make that a reality, but also it's a distress signal to say that the church is in crisis. The discrimination and exclusion of women is a sin, and we're here to say that the next pope will inherit this question and needs to work quickly to correct it.
Okay, so Kate is a character, right? But I went on the womenordination.org website because it was just too fascinating to not. And this is such a woke group. They said they are a feminist voice for women in the Roman Catholic Church. I think feminism is so antithetical to the Roman Catholic Church. It's just crazy. It says WOC is a grassroots-driven movement that promotes activism, dialogue, and prayerful witness to call for women's full equality in the church. And then these are their values, not the Bible, which is just like that should be the values of the church. No. We have full and equal participation of people of all genders, grassroots activism, diversity, inclusion, and racial justice, collective decision-making, empowerment and participatory leadership, feminist, mujeristas, womanist, and trans thought action. Yes, that's exactly what I want out of my pope, for sure. Social justice. Oh, Siri has gone off. Guys, 1 second. Oh my. Go away. My Siri on my my Siri on my iPad just went off. Siri, go away. Go away. Okay. We'll pivot. Anyway. Looking at this website, guys, this is like absolutely absurd. I cannot believe that anybody thinks that this is like a worthwhile group worthy of defending. But anyway, I figured we should ask the question, like, what does Catholicism say about this, right? Very plain and simple. Women cannot be ordained as deacons, priests, or bishops, okay? Only baptized men can validly receive the sacrament according to Roman Catholic teachings. This was reaffirmed in 1993 by Pope John Paul II, stating that the church has no authority to ordain women priests. However, the role of women as deacons is a little bit more debated and contentious, right? Pope Francis, before his passing, actually commissioned a study into the historical role of women as deacons. However, there has been no change in church teachings that has occurred since this. And, I told you this whole story in light of the fact that the first American Pope was announced today. Pope Robert Provost of Chicago will be known as Pope Leo, and he was announced today. So big day for any Catholics out there. Can't say I'm trying to move my chair. Can't say I myself am clamoring over this. I am not a Catholic myself, but I just found it to be a very interesting conversation to have about this pink smoke going up as the white smoke came out this morning or this afternoon as well. Anyway, let's get into our next story. Disney has announced the location of its 7th theme park, Abu Dhabi. This will be Disney's first location in the Middle East. They have, like I said, 6 other theme parks across the world. So Miral, which is the premier innovative design company in Abu Dhabi, is actually going to be paying for the entire production, development, and construction of this new theme park. So it's not necessarily Disney built, designed, whatever. Disney's not sinking a ton of money into this, but Disney will oversee the creative design. Miral will be in charge of actually operating the theme park day to day, but Disney is going to be making money off of royalty checks and providing operational oversight after the park opens. They have their Disney standard. They have to keep everybody to it consistently, so that your theme park experience is consistent across the board. But let me be very clear about what the beliefs of the United Arab Emirates government is, because I think it's very important to understanding what hypocrites Disney has become right now. In the UAE, same-sex marriage is completely banned. Same-sex adoption is completely banned. You can be sent to jail for producing any LGBT promotional material. And gay and lesbians face the death penalty for any same-sex activity. That is the standard in the UAE. And might I remind you, Disney pitched an entire fit over the alleged Don't Say Gay bill, in which Florida public schools were no longer allowed to house borderline pornographic books in school libraries. Disney tried to tell the average American that it was problematic to believe that children shouldn't have access to books about gender identity and sexuality in elementary school. They were willing to lose their special tax status over that issue. But the second that the Emiratis come with buckets of money willing to develop a Middle Eastern Disney, all those principles went flying out the window. Am I shocked? No. Do I think Disney is spineless? Yes, absolutely. But no, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I just know that this is what Disney is all about. Okay, let's get into our next story, because this story, I can already tell. I can tell you now, this story came out today, and the media is about to spin it into, I'm sure, 80 different empathetic, spin, manipulative narratives. That's the word I'm looking for. They're about to spin it into a manipulative narrative. And I want you to be armed with the facts before the narrative and the manipulation comes, so that when you see morons on TikTok or Instagram posting reels about this, you can be there equipped with the facts. Okay? So, a Georgia college student is facing deportation after she ran a red light, leading police to realize that her entire family was illegally living in the U.S. for the last 15 years. Mexican national Yimena Aria Cristobal, she's 19 years old, was pulled over on May 5th. Oh wait, Cinco de Mayo. The irony. Yikes. I didn't even realize that. Yikes. Okay, moving on. According to law enforcement, she failed to adhere to a no turn on red sign and was ultimately pulled over. When asked for her driver's license, she admitted she didn't have a U.S. driver's license. She had an international driver's license, and she didn't have it on her. Her mom had taken it from her because she admitted and she knew that she shouldn't have been driving. Officers reportedly attempted to talk to the mom to back up that story. However, the mom didn't speak English. Yemena was arrested and charged with driving without a valid license and was brought to an ICE detention facility because she's an illegal immigrant. Yemena was a Dalton State Community College student, and her parents were brought to the U.S., or her parents brought her to the U.S. when she was 4 years old. Again, illegally. Now, oddly enough, Yemena's dad was arrested last month in April for driving 19 miles per hour over the speed limit. He is actually being held at the same ICE facility as his daughter. Interesting, huh? According to the New York Post, it's unclear whether the family applied for legal status, asylum, or citizenship. It's unclear what their status is. We just know they're here illegally and they don't really have much status. Otherwise, they wouldn't, not status in terms of like, hierarchy status. Like they don't have legal status because they're in a nice detention facility. It is now presumed that ICE is going to arrest and deport the entire family. It's believed there are other daughters in the family as well. We are unsure of their age right now. I'm going to assume that they're younger if we don't know their age or much about them. Now, these cases are hard, and that's why I said I wanted to arm you with the facts, because it's very easy to empathize with a case like this. I myself moved to America at the same age, around 4 or 5, and I truly couldn't even imagine my life being any different than being here. And I'm sure Yemena feels the exact way, right? It wasn't her choice. She wasn't going to come here and know at 4 years old, my parents are breaking the law. I should deport myself back by myself and be a 5-year-old running around Mexico. Like, be for real. That's not going to happen. These are the consequences. She is bearing the consequences of her family's decision, right? However, just because we empathize with someone doesn't mean we change the rules for them. I've told this story on my podcast a bunch of times about how the immigration process is a serious process. I had to get pulled out of elementary school because my dad, who's here, we were here legally on green cards. We had to go to our lawyer and talk to our legal team after my dad got pulled over for a speeding ticket, because those kind of things can have an implication on getting your immigration through and becoming a legal citizen. So I'm not surprised that this is happening. I also am not going to be shocked if there are accusations coming from the left about racial profiling from police now, because police are going to pull people over for breaking the law, and then all of a sudden you're going to see a bunch of civil rights activists saying, well, you pulled her over because she's Hispanic and Trump is deporting all these Hispanics, okay? I'm just like to be a predictor of things, and I predict that that is going to happen. And by the way, you can trust my predictions, because last week on the show, I believe it was Tuesday, April 28th. It would have been Tuesday, April 28th. So 3 episodes ago, I had on a guest named Shelby Talcott, and we were talking through the stories. And one of the stories was that the FBI had issued in a report saying that, I believe it was the Venezuelan government and Tren de Aragua were working alongside each other to send Tren de Aragua members to the U.S. to sow chaos and put a damper on our safety here in the country. And I said something about this smells fishy. I do not believe it. And by the way, yesterday we found out that other agencies believe that this was a fraudulent report put out to bolster the Trump administration's argument that the Alien Enemies Act is, a viable solution for the problem that we're facing with illegal immigrants. That's not to say I don't politically agree with Trump. However, I just saw bullshit when I saw bullshit, and I had to call it out. And yesterday I was proven right. So you can trust my predictions. I'm kind of getting good at this. And I don't say that cockily. Is that a word? Cockily. I don't say that as a cocky person. I'm just saying I'm starting to hone this gift of like intuition in the political world, and I'm going to smell bullshit when I smell bullshit. Anyway, if you love this podcast, then you will absolutely love the Underreported Wrapped email. It's sent straight to your inbox every Friday morning. I've already prepped tomorrow's. It comes out Friday, May 9th. Already prepped. It will be in your inbox, 9 a.m. Eastern. In it, you'll get a quick read of the 10 most underreported stories of the week, plus some occasional personal updates and pictures of America's goodest boy, my dog Harper, who you can always see in the picture behind me. Check out the link in the description to subscribe for free, and while you're down there, be sure to give this episode a thumbs up or a 5-star review. All right, this next story I think is so fascinating. It's back from 2024, so, well, it all took place in 2024, but all the repercussions are happening now. So I know that the media are not going to be covering this because it's, quote, old news, but it's sentencing. Anyway, let me give you the story before I get ahead of myself. A former Mesa County, Colorado postal worker admitted she stole and cast mail-in ballots in the 2024 general election. Vicky Stewart and her alleged accomplice, Sally Jane Maxton, were accused of identity theft and forgery. So the district attorney's office investigated this case and claimed that they were tipped off when county election workers, so these are the people who are distributing mail-in ballots and or whatnot, they received calls from voters in the area saying, hey, my ballot was rejected because of signature discrepancies. So when you cast your ballot, the signature on your ballot must match the signature on your ID as a form of verification. I personally hate that because I've now made my new updated signature and I regret the one I put on my ID and I want to be able to change it, but you can't. It has to match the one on your ID as a verification measure. So these average citizens call into the county clerk's office and they're like, hey, we haven't even received our ballots yet, but they got messages saying that their ballots were being rejected over these signature discrepancies. And all of this started taking place in one neighborhood in Colorado where they all shared like one giant mailbox area. They didn't have the mailboxes outside their house. It was like one of those big mailbox areas. So the investigation was kickstarted after that. And they found through fingerprinting that Sally Jane Maxton, one of these co-conspirators, had allegedly obtained ballots not delivered via USPS by her postal worker friend, Vicky Stewart. So Vicky was the USPS worker, allegedly didn't put them into the mailbox, took them back to her friend Sally, and Sally told investigators that the ballots had been given to her by a random man. That doesn't add up. And then that random man, which we believe to be Vicky, asked her to help test the voting system. Later, Sally Maxton admitted that she and Vicky Stewart, the USPS employee, planned on testing the electronic voting signature verification system. That is such a long word. Basically, they wanted to make sure that the signature verification system aligned. So they took a bunch of ballots that Vicky was supposed to deliver, forged voter signatures that obviously they didn't know what the people's voter signatures actually looked like, and then returned the ballots. And they did this at least 20 times, which is election tampering. It's really unclear who these women voted for using this verification system and whether their votes counted or not. Like, I don't know. I tried to find the answers for you. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if these were Kamala supporters. I don't know if these were Trump supporters. I looked at them. I tried to racially profile them. I tried to do all the things. I could see supporters of either candidate questioning the validity of ballots. I could. So you don't know. Feel free to, toss your guess in the comments, but I don't know. And while this is an obvious crime, I do think that this is the sad result of states not taking adequate measures to protect the integrity of our election system. And listen, I'm not trying to make excuses for these women. They're like in their 60s. I don't know what the hell they're doing or why they thought that this was a good idea. But I will also say, separate sentence, not excusing the behavior. Federal and state failure to protect these systems breeds an inherent distrust. So I understand why people feel the need to test the system, even if it's bad. Speaking of people who are testing the federal government, Western Carolina University is actively refusing to comply with Trump's executive order on women's sports. The order explicitly bans biological males from competing against female athletes. But here's what's shocking and different about this. Leaked emails reveal university officials have made deliberate decisions to defy federal authority rather than change their policies. And so instead of jumping to outrage, which is my initial thought, why don't all of these universities take the side of a bunch of men? That's my initial reaction. Instead, I was like, calm down. Let's figure out what WCU's rationale was for this, okay? So I did a little digging. Obviously, all of this stems from a law called Title IX. It's been around since 1972. Title IX basically says schools can't discriminate based on sex if they want federal money, okay? So they don't have to abide by Title IX, but they can't get federal money if they don't abide by Title IX. Make sense? So for decades, this has seemed really straightforward enough until obviously the conversation about transgender athletes entered the room and everything got complicated. Universities like WCU really suddenly had to decide whose rights took a priority, women or transgender identifying women. That's always been the case. That's always the decision that you're making when it comes to the alleged rights of people, right? WCU administrators are sticking to their guns, and I'm assuming through the advice of lawyers, and letting people use spaces matching their gender identity and not their biological sex. The university's LGBT Resource Center obviously has publicly supported this decision, but what's really interesting, it's like a little bit more complicated. The reason, the rationale behind this is that state laws and these inclusion laws that have already been passed at the federal government level, the school could get sued by transgender athletes because there are some laws in the books that are counterintuitive to Trump's executive order. And I don't agree with them. I still think it's like worth the risk to be on the right side of the federal government. However, I do understand a little bit more how that's a fair worry, because some judges say banning trans athletes violates Title IX, while the Trump administration and other judges say that allowing trans athletes violates Title IX. So there's like these two competing ways to understand Title IX in its current state. So it's just not open and shut legally. Morally, it's a total lack of fairness for female athletes and a total lack of moral clarity by the university. But legally, I think it's important to understand that these schools aren't doing this just to fight the Trump administration. They're not here to just like give the middle finger to the Trump administration. A lot of them would risk losing federal funding over the lawsuits that could ensue and then the PR that can ensue from a generation that they perceive to be woke still, which is really asinine in my opinion, because universities like Western Carolina, they depend so much more on federal funding to do their research, to give student loans out. By defying a presidential order like this, they are essentially gambling with their financial future over potentially a handful of students who are so delusional that they'll sue over this. I just don't think that's a winning message. And also, if the federal government decides to make an example out of them, that could be a big deal for them as well, right? Now that the story is kind of growing in traction, I see it percolating above the water just a little bit. The consequences of that could be devastating for the university. Harvard doesn't need to be the only example that the Trump administration makes. And I think a lot of conservatives, I guess a lot of far leftists with Student for Justice in Palestine, they would be okay with that, right? With these universities toppling if they're not willing to abide by common sense. I think that's pretty fair. And I guess this kind of proves my argument that I've been making for weeks on the show, that the far left and the populist right are becoming closer and closer together. We seemingly have the same aims, take down these college universities. One of us wants to do it through the federal government, and one of us wants to do it through terrorism. I'm going to take the federal government one. I think that approach is a little bit more rational, shall we say? But either way, I guess we have the same goal, just really different ways of getting there. Anyway, I do have a bonus story for you guys, as well as a real or satire segment for you too, coming for you. But this bonus story, I wanted to tell you, it's super short and sweet. I made a little reel about it, but I want people's takes on this because I feel like a lot of people are disagreeing with me. So there was a story out of Utah where this 7-year-old boy allegedly drove his little sister to get McDonald's breakfast. And police in Ogden, Utah, were alerted to a reckless driver driving this white SUV, and then the driver hit a parking strip. And it turns out it was a young boy, a 7-year-old boy, who drove 9 miles with cash to get a Happy Meal. Which to me, I'm like, he had the cash in hand. He probably knew where he was going. This was premeditated mischief. I'd honestly be really proud of my kid for having that much foresight. Anyway, he's not in trouble with the police at all, but the mom says her kid is grounded for life. The child reportedly has behavioral issues and a desire to become a truck driver. So he was just getting some reps in. Just practicing a little bit. Now, I'm not a mom yet, so maybe my opinion will change in time. But when I saw this, everyone was like, oh my God, the kid's crazy. And the mom was like, he's grounded. And everyone was like, it's so cute. I'm like, Mama, how does your child drive 9 miles without you realizing both your children are gone? 9 miles for a little kid that's probably driving under the speed. How did you not realize that both the kids were gone and your car is missing? Like, isn't this more on the mom than the kids? And like, I'm kind of shocked the mom's not in trouble or arrested or something. I need parents to chime in on this because it's like such a hotly debated issue. I see in the comments some people are like, you just clearly haven't had a kid yet. I'm like, yeah, that's why I admitted I don't have a kid and my opinion might change on this, but right now that's just how I feel. And I have other people that are like, what psycho parent would not be watching their kids? Anyway, I personally feel nasty blaming it on moms, especially ahead of Mother's Day. How evil of me. But like, come on. I don't know. It's kind of nuts. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Always dying to hear them. And finally, we have to end this week with my favorite segment. Is it real or is it satire? The segment that all makes us wonder whether the stories we're about to react to are
real or is it satire?
You cannot be serious!
I pushed the button too quickly, so sorry, that sounded really odd. I was like in the middle of my sentence and all of a sudden, boom, real or satire came up. Anyway, the mayor of Salt Lake City proposed a bill adopting 3 new flags as official city flags after the state of Utah passed this ban on political and non-official flags from government buildings. This has become a really popular trend, so no more rainbow flags, no more Gadsden flags, just the American flag. Why is that so hard for people to wrap their mind around? Why can't we just be okay with that? But anyway, Salt Lake City didn't like that rule, so the council voted whether to make the pride flag, the trans flag, and the Juneteenth flag official city flags. And you guys, it passed. It actually passed. This, if you're on the listening audience, I will describe it to you. But if you're in the viewing audience, very obviously, these are all the flags of Salt Lake City now, okay? We have the, I guess it's like the pride trans flag with like the rainbow, but then also the baby blue and baby pink, plus the brown and the black. And then it's got a flower on it, which I'm assuming the flower is from the original Salt Lake City, or like either the Utah flag, or I believe that's the Salt Lake City flag. Let me know in the comments if we've got any people from Utah that can chime in on that. And then they have the actual trans flag as well, which is, the baby pink and the baby blue. The most ironic flag in the world, truly. And then I guess this blue and white flag is the Juneteenth flag. I didn't realize that there was a different flag for Juneteenth. That's literally nuts. People will literally stop at nothing to push this agenda, I swear. Absolutely nothing. Anyway, I can feel the thunder rolling in. There's about to be a big storm here in Nashville, but scary. There have been so many storms. April showers bring May flowers. Here in Tennessee, April showers have brought May showers. That's about it. Anyway, if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the burger emoji as an homage to that little man who wanted to have a McDonald's Happy Meal? Anyway, have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mamas out there, and I'll see you guys back here on Tuesday. Bye! Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about how beautiful, intelligent, and funny I am. And if you want more content, click right over here for more videos and clips of my show. I'll see you back here next time. Bye!